does say we're live on YouTube.
Oh, excellent.
I think we have a couple more seconds. I've got to hopefully.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first live stream event as Human Rights Solidarity. We're here today live for a very special occasion, marking Refugee Week 2020 here in the UK and also celebrated around the world too. We're joined by some very special guests who I will introduce. But firstly, from Human Rights itself, it's me and Mehmet, both co-chairs of the membership committee, both on a voluntary basis. Mehmet is also the director of MentorWise, an organisation in the UK working and helping to support youth. And I also volunteer as a supervisor for the charity MentorWise too. And at the current, it's predominantly refugee children. I think we could say that we both help and support, but we can discuss it further during the discussion. So yeah, I think we can say on behalf of both of us and for Human Rights Solidarity, we're honoured to be here with our special guests. So we're here again with two very special organisations. Firstly, Action for Humanity, which is funded by Lord Roger Roberts, who we have here today, very fortunately, and also the current director, Mark Lavender, who is here with us. And we're excited to hear about the work that they're doing. And our second organisation, or community-led project that we could say, is Piece of Cake, a nice play with words, and I'm sure Asma will go into the details on how they came up with the title. And what crucial work they're doing, and the contributions they're providing to our society. So without hogging the microphone any further, Asma, would you like to tell us about your organisation and the work you're doing?
Thank you. Thank you, Aisha. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So we are, Piece of Cake is about bringing people together through cake and conversation. So I'll tell you a little bit about how it started later on, but I'd just like to say welcome everybody. I know everyone's got some cake. I've got my cake as well, provided by the Eaton Cake Company, who made a wonderful cake for us last time, and I've got my copper. So I hope everybody watching us can join us with their cake, and Mark, we will be eating it in a few minutes. So yeah, so what Piece of Cake is about coming together. So we can't actually do that now with the lockdown. And hopefully it's easing, and hopefully we will have a meeting together soon. But what we do is we just say to people, have a piece of cake, as in have a piece of cake event. And lots of people have hosted them since our first one, which was almost accidental. When the Bataclan attacks happened, I put a simple post on a group called Mummy's Gin Fund, and I don't drink gin, but for me, gin is a metaphor for it was a buying and selling group which has turned into a support group for women, and it's for mums really. And I said that my child had never heard of the word ISIS, and somebody had said that to him, and he came home and he asked who ISIS was. He was about 8 at the time. And I just put a post on Mummy's Gin Fund saying, oh God, how do I start explaining this? And so many people came up with, they said, oh, why? I said, I'd just like to get together. And I thought about 4 or 5 women would come to my house, we'd have a cup of tea, give each other a hug. But this moment in time, what happened was there was a lot of reprisal attacks after, and a lot of anti-Muslim hatred as well. And then there's also all the other headlines that you hear about refugees and all of that kind of stuff. So all of that stuff was going on. And amazingly, we had about 800 comments, 800 likes, 200 comments, and a host of women saying, let's get together, let's have this. And within 3 days, I organised a team of ours. So we have, there's a lovely lady called Catherine, Sally, the Goldsmiths Community Centre, Liz, and our videographer. All of us loads of people just came together and said, right, let's host this event. And we really didn't know how many people would turn up. But this was 3 days later after my first post. About 60 people came up, and I called it Meet a Muslim because there was a lot of, and so many people came. And then I thought, oh, I better, I've asked people to come and meet a Muslim, but there's not many Muslims there. So let me phone up my friends and tell them to come, because people will have to meet somebody from the Muslim faith. And then what happened was, and I never had to ask them. I never had to say, what are your feelings on ISIS? Or because I knew as a Muslim, they were totally against what they were doing. So I phoned them, everyone came, and there was lots of love around the room, and everybody wanted to talk, and everyone wanted to, and everyone brought cake, and it was amazing. So some of our videos are available on our website, which I think you're going to put the link on afterwards. So our very first one was amazing. And then shortly after, Brexit happened again. We had all those horrible headlines, lots of confusion. And then people said to me, why don't you have another one? So something that I thought was going to be a one-off appeasement has turned into this whole need and movement. So we had one for Brexit, and again, lots of people came, and we said, whether you voted in or out, come and have a conversation. If you have a conversation with someone, because what we don't want is, we don't want polarization, because communities are becoming more and more polarized, and people are becoming quite insular. And at the moment we have the Black Lives Matter, which they do, and I think it's really great to listen to people from the Black community at the moment, and then hopefully be there in solidarity for them. So and then we had other events, and Ben and Jerry sponsored us, and that is where, yes, that's where we met. So Roger and Mark, please let everybody know how we met.
It wasn't Ben and Jerry, wasn't it? I
Yes.
didn't remember that until you mentioned it, when they had me eating lots of ice cream, if I remember rightly. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yes, there are people who sort of put things together, they organize something, and we happen to meet one another. But that's what it's all about. I got into the House of Lords because I'd been meeting people. Meeting people with various difficulties and so on. I remember one thing we had, there was the terrible African famine of some years ago, and then it was trying to wonder, how on earth can we help? And I went one Sunday morning. I was going to a church, and I thought, I've got time to spare. There's a scrapyard over there, and I've just got time. I need to buy some chairs for the church. But they hadn't got any chairs. But what they had was a brand new ambulance that was destined for the Middle East, and it hadn't been used. Wow, and I thought that'd be quite good. We could send it out to Ethiopia. Yeah. And so I asked Raymond, who will run the scrapyard, Raymond, how much do you want for it? And he was thinking, I'll make a fast buck here. £7,000. £7,000. Well, okay. And I was in London the following day at a trustees meeting. And I asked them, and they said, wouldn't it be a good idea if you and the North Wales people didn't raise that money to send the ambulance? And we did. We raised a lot more than we were able to send an ambulance that was converted into a mobile clinic. We were able to send a Land Rover with 4 doctors from South Wales there. Wow. They all went out to Tigray, which is in that part of the world. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful because, we were able to send out medicines and that sort of thing. And it was something well worth doing. So it started off hands-on. I'm not very good at some sort of academic chat. I much prefer to have a challenge and then say, yes, we'll try to reach that. Well, we did. I wasn't in the House of Lords in those days, but I think that probably helped me. They saw this fella's got something about him, and I did. And then we did a lot of other things. There was the big battle, wasn't there? The civil wars and that in parts of Africa. And yeah, and part of that also, I remember very well, was in Goma. And Goma, they had an awful lot of kids dying of diphtheria and cholera and that sort of thing. So the Association of Pioneer Rescue Officers, they said, Roger, what can we do? Well, we can raise some money and go out there and dig some wells. So I didn't go. I'm no good at digging wells. I didn't go. But we sent some money, quite a bit of money. People gave. Because if you see a cause, the reason they gave well for Ethiopia, you remember, you're a bit young to remember that.
I'm not. I remember.
You know, the kids with distended stomachs and the flies all about them. And when people saw that on the television, we must do something to relieve this. And it was the same in Goma. And there were about 1,000 odd kids in a disused cinema. And they were dying about 100 a day. And so, but the wells brought them that fresh, safe drink that they wanted. And often people just want safe water. And I remember the best facts I've ever had. We've stopped cholera dead in our patch. Oh, that was wonderful, you know. And so that led to many other things. And bringing people together in different ways. Oh, I could go on for a long time, and I do sometimes, but I mustn't do this evening, except it's all a matter of looking to people, seeing them not as strangers, but as brothers and sisters. We're one family. You know, we might be different religions, we might be, even some might not speak Welsh, you know, so, but, you know, this is what we do. We bring people together. And we tackle as many of their problems as we can. And Mark's wonderful at doing that. He does a much better job than I do. So, yeah, it's just that. And I was surprised when the Foreign Secretary said he didn't like the people going on a knee. If I could get up afterwards, I would go on a knee. But at my age, I'd be stuck there for eternity, you know. But so we're brothers and sisters, and the great people who sort of inspired me. Well, I think one of the best speeches ever made was "I Have a Dream" by Martin Luther King. You know, I have a dream, and I share that dream, and I'm trying to get other people, and they do. They're much better at it than I am.
Oh, absolutely not, Roger. You have, you are such an inspiration, and I didn't know that you had started way back then, and you've actually stayed fighting all the causes. Really, you've been helping since then. I had no idea, because you really do a lot for refugees at the moment, and the refugee cause. You bring a lot of people together from different organizations. Action for Humanity, you have meetings. I've been to a few of your meetings, and I've met organizations that provide mobile phones for unaccompanied adults. And then I've met lawyers and barristers who are out there in Greece trying to do the paperwork for a lot of the refugees, because sometimes it's such a long process and people don't have you know, they need advocacy. So there's that project, there's the Ambers project, the Donate for Refugees. I have met some wonderful people through Action for Humanity. So Mark and Roger, thank you. And it's put, when you look at these things that are happening, and then you know people are doing, amazing people like you are doing stuff, it puts your heart at ease. So thank you so much. I mean, your meetings, you all the different organizations, Mark and Robert, that you have put together, because this is what happens. A lot of people do things separately, but you're actually bringing all the different organizations together.
Thank you very much indeed. That is much more of a compliment than I deserve. But you are an inspiration to me, Esma. You really are, honestly, because the way you get people together to eat cake, you know, it's a dream of mine. I have masses of cake. I have too much
Such
cake.
a hard thing to do, Roger.
I really do. Yeah. But you and your folk, and of course, we're just one family, you know. We're brothers and sisters, and I love this human family. Yes, and that we've got to do as much as we can to, well, especially at this time, to try to make sure that they survive this terrible crisis. Thanks, Asma, and thanks for inviting me along, and Mark as well. He can speak for himself, I'm sure. Can't keep him quiet. Thank you.
Thank you.
The hard task is to get Roger to eat cake and drink tea.
So Mark,
He's saying rude things about me. His job's on the line, you know.
So Mark, you're the parliamentary assistant for Lord Roger Roberts, aren't you? That's
I am, yes.
And also the director of Action for Humanity. And you've got a lovely picture of one of our cakes that Anita baked last year.
That was last year.
Yeah, and that cake was made with all the ingredients from the World Refugee Choir. And I think it was the choir, Becky, who had actually brought us together. She brought
It was, yes.
to the yes.
I remember that this cake, the Citizens of the World Choir, within the choir we have 53 members and 28 different nationalities. And I remember the lady who baked this cake, she managed to get ingredients from each of those countries and put them all together. I mean, I thought, that's a bit overkill. That's too many ingredients. That cake is one of the nicest cakes I've had, Asma.
Yeah.
I remember you trying to find me a piece and turning up with it crushed in your hand.
Yeah. It was the only bit I could manage because everybody absolutely loved it. But this is the thing, our cultures all cross, don't they? So the cardamom and orange flower blossom and lots of amazing things. And, you know, it was a really lovely representation of everything coming together and tasting very nice. And that's how life should be. It should be everyone coming together.
Without a doubt. I mean, the thing I like about I mean, we've met about 4 years ago, Asma.
Yes.
And since then, we've managed to do 3 events in Parliament.
Yes.
Citizens of the World Choir and Action for Humanity, which I look forward to every year. Yesterday, we held an event on Zoom, and although it was very different to being in Parliament and being together in that way, it was still very nice doing an open rehearsal with the choir.
Yes,
and
it was.
The choir is definitely one of the best things I've been a part of. Again, thanks to Lord Roberts, his idea of bringing people together. I think the choir has been a big success, and it's something I will always look forward to being involved with the Citizens of the World Choir and Piece of Cake and Action for Humanity. I think together we do a very important job, and I think we work extremely well together.
Yeah.
Can I just come in on that? Did you mind if I repeat a story I repeat 100 times? We took the choir the first year to Llangollen International Music Exhibition, and there they were singing on an open stage, not on the competitive stage. And afterwards, a lad came to me, Ali. You've met Ali, perhaps, from Afghanistan? Yes. And Ali says to me, do you know, that was the best day of my life? You know, and if somebody says to me that what you're doing, Asma, helps them to have hope, the best days of their lives, then we're doing what the Lord wants us to do. Not this law, you know. Well, no, this one as well, but it's very, very way down in the ranks, you know. But it is, that's what we're here for. You know, we're here to be brothers and sisters. And, oh, dear, I'm going on it. And it's not when the refugees are coming over, what we do for them, but how they've come over the years from their different countries and how much they've contributed to our society. You know, yeah, gosh, they even bought some cake with my finger on some of these places, or some recipes at least. Sorry, I'm going to shut up now.
No, and I was going to say, in celebration, Mark, and very good timing, we can eat some cake. I'm going to have a little bit of mine. I know you've been dying to eat your cake as well. So I've got my mouth full. Who's going to speak?
You've got good cake there. Yeah, you know, my little bit of ginger cake. Very good.
Everybody at home, have some cake.
How about you what?
I'm sure our viewers are having cake now as well with us.
Everybody at home, have some of your cake. What we normally do, oh, Battenberg, that's very nice, Mark. What we do normally is we all get together. So if you look on our website and on our Facebook page, you'll see that we all get together and we have the piece cake and we cut it together. And so if we have had a children's piece of cake where we had so many children from different nationalities all cutting the cake together, holding hands, joining hands together. We've had one in Leicester where I had my childhood friends who, you know, we went to each other's places of worship. So I had my Sikh friend, my Christian friend, my Hindu friend, all of us cutting cake together, and we had leaders from all the different faiths. And then we've had piece of cake at Parliament, and we've got photos of at the Palace of Westminster of all of us cutting cake together. We've had quite a few lords in that picture.
I think this cake, Asma.
Yes.
The cake behind me, I think this was the cake that you cut last year.
Yes, that's the cake that we cut last year.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, it's got the I always get teased by Roger for pinching the CND sign, but anyway, everybody knows it as a symbol of peace. And Mehmet, you do some wonderful work as well. It would be really good for you to connect with Action for Humanity and maybe come along to one of the meetings next time. Yeah.
It's very inspirational what I'm hearing, and we work with young people, and they're in desperate need of hope and projects like this to get together, to see that they're not alone. We work with refugee kids, and most of the time it is when they come together with other refugee kids that they realize they're not the only ones. And especially with those who've come here a long time ago, if they see that they've succeeded, they look up to them as their role models. And we really need to connect and bring these people together. And I'm sure Lord Roger would also, I mean, hearing him would be a massive inspiration to them.
Yeah.
Well, did you know, sorry, I said I wouldn't say anything again. You know the Notting Hill Carnival? Perhaps sometime when this is over, we could get a carnival of all the faiths and the people, and perhaps have a cake recipe competition as well. You know? But certainly, we've got to show that we're together, because, you know, my dreams, people like Abraham Lincoln from the Conway Valley, his family came in. I'm great at that, you know. Yeah, I say he related to me, that's a big lie, but I wish he was, you know. And then Martin Luther King, William Wilberforce, all these names who deserve statues, don't they? Not like some who are there now, but there we are. You know, there we. It was history, but we can also, you know, Martin Luther King's is I have a dream thing. Well, we can have that dream. Every one of us can have that dream, you know, because I know that my children, well, three of them, and there are 7 grandchildren. They're so happy with different communities and people of different backgrounds. So there we are. I really must shut up now.
No, please. It's very inspiring to hear you. And one day I will come along. Roger is a Methodist minister, and I will come along to one of your sermons one day, hopefully.
They're usually in Welsh.
Mark, you'll have to translate for me. So
he's trying to learn Welsh. He's making it well. Anyway, I don't know.
Dwi'n trio dysgu siarad Cymraeg.
My daughter's trying to
learn Welsh.
Yes, I will. Maybe that's one of the languages I need to try. But Mehmet, you bring the young people together, and they do lots of projects together. It sounds amazing. And what sort of things have you been able to achieve?
Yes. Well, we've been operating mostly in London for the past 5 years or so. And in the past few years, we've seen a huge surge in refugees coming into the UK from all over the world. And what we're seeing is young people, when they come into this country, one way that they can feel at home, or one way that they can feel like they're welcome, is by participating in community acts, in projects that are going on in their own communities, and it makes them feel good. It makes them feel like they're part of something. And we've organized a series of community projects where we brought young people together and got them to do small acts of kindness, small acts of good. So something that we do regularly as part of our work is to bring young people in small groups to care homes, to get to speak to old people there, to take, gift them a flower on Mother's Day, for instance. This is something that we did. We brought flowers with us to to the mothers in the care homes, and a lot of the children were refugees, and it was lovely to see how they were interacting with them, and they were feeling like they were doing something good for the community that welcomed them. And this kind of these kind of projects, supporting them through their education, bringing them together with role model mentors. This is what we're trying to do, and it's beautiful. I mean, I'm sure I'd be very happy for them to be part of such a project, to a piece of cake, bringing them together and having cake with different community members.
Definitely. That's one more. That's one more planned for us.
Yes.
We recently were planning a piece of cake with the Chinese community, because they've been the subject of a lot of the hate. But then there's a lot of love out there as well. And what you're saying as well, it's not fair for children to feel any different to any other child. It really is quite painful to think of children to have that stigma. And unfortunately, sometimes, I don't want to keep brandishing that not all media is bad, but sometimes some pockets of the media are not very helpful in putting lots of ideas and brandishing everybody with one brush, or just, and the fear factor. And what you're doing with the roses is just so simple that it breaks all those headlines, doesn't it? It just crushes every single headline that anybody has ever, read. And this is why with Piece of Cake as well, we have people we invite people who have different viewpoints. So, it's pointless, everybody who is working with refugees and loves doing this, to come together. It's nice to have people from different areas of life, and people who've never met a refugee before and only read headlines about them, and then to meet someone and think, oh, that's, I remember when one of our third piece of cake, my brother was serving tea to everybody, and one of the young women said to him, she said, "You're a Muslim man, why are you serving tea to women? I thought that's not what, that are you allowed to do this?" And he was so shocked. He said, "I cook every day. My wife can't, she can cook, and she cooks very nice, but she said, I cook almost every day, so I shouldn't get into trouble here." But he was really shocked. He was really shocked. And I was really shocked. And these are the kind of conversations we need to have, and dispel a lot of the myths that are created. Because I think that a lot of people have a lot of love here. And Roger, you were talking about the statues and all the different representation, but I think, and I know people are sensitive about the statues, and I'm hearing things from both sides, and I don't want to offend anybody from either side now, or whether, but I think if people talk to each other, then they can understand each other. So instead of jumping on that bandwagon, if they actually got together in a room and talked about it, I know the government are commissioning something, but that's still going to have lots of headlines around it. But if we got people to just talk about it, talk about how they felt, and I think the real symbol is the love that people have. Actually, I am really proud of this country for being very welcoming, to people, and I love all of us. We all of us are part of that, aren't we? And all of us are part of that. And I don't like words like tolerance, all those words. I just think that, absolutely, as Roger was saying, we're all but one human race, and as long as we keep talking to each other and understanding each other and listening to each other, but we have to create those opportunities. And I suppose that's what Piece of Cake is saying: create those opportunities. And very often in a piece of cake, at every piece of cake event, I say to people that there's no one viewpoint. So it's not about you're coming to listen to somebody speak, and then, you have to adhere to their ideas. Everybody's ideas are just as important. Everyone's opinions are just as important as each other, because we all have different life experiences. And and I always tell people, go and find somebody you would not normally talk to on a day-to-day basis, and just giving people permission to do that is amazing. And we've had some beautiful conversations, haven't we?
Yep. Asma, one thing I do remember, I said I wouldn't speak again.
No, please, this is all about talking today.
Sorry, it's talking. When the first Syrian refugees came to Aberystwyth 4 years ago, they were so welcomed by the people there that they got flowers, and they handed out flowers to the people of Aberystwyth, you know, sharing flowers as well together. Yeah, it's a heart. It's a community with a heart, isn't it?
Yes.
A community with a heart. Yep.
Yeah.
We'll share flowers as well as cake.
Yeah. No, and that's just reminded me of some work that I've been doing with my own mentees. So on my day-to-day basis, I work as a research fellow with the Dialogue Society, which is all about, you know, creating those outlets of dialogue for people of different faiths, you know, political ideologies and everything really. And for me, you know, the interfaith aspect of it was something that was quite personal, because, you know, I grew up in an interfaith background, and for Christmas I wanted to, you know, put on a Christmas meal for the lonely. So this was last Christmas, and I got in contact with my local mosque, and the imam was on board. So he said that, you know, we'd use the mosque to facilitate that. And at the same time, you know, I do some volunteering work with mentees as well, around, you know, 15, 16 years old. And I just told them about it. And I said, you know, this is something that's really personal for me. And I just wanted to share with you that this was something I'm doing. And then in the evening, they all messaged me and said that they wanted to be part of it. So I had, and these are all refugee children. So on the day, I think around 6 of them turned up. We didn't know what to expect. And they all get on the kitchen, and we had, you know, a lady from Age UK come help with the cooking on Christmas Day. This is, you know, and we put it out there, and we didn't know whether we'd have any lonely people turn up, but we had a huge diverse group of people come. You know, we had single mothers come with their children. We had elderly members of the community come in, and a lot of children. And our refugee, you know, mentees worked with and the others, and they did hot chocolate decorating, and just tried to have that, you know, environment to talk. And it was over cake, and it was over a Christmas meal in a mosque, which is something that, you know, unfortunately doesn't make the headlines so often, you know, as the headlines of hate. But we're getting there, I think, you know, with the work that we're doing. So yeah.
I think
it's a shame that events like this never make the headlines, and the work, you know, the great work that everybody here does not make the headlines, unfortunately, because good stories don't sell papers, unfortunately.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
But it is nice to come together with people like yourself and hear what you're doing for the community, you know, within the community. And I love hearing the good, you know, good stories of helping with kids and doing, you know, we've done so much work with kids. I mean, I think one of our success stories is somebody we met within the choir who came to the Eisteddfod, which Roger mentioned earlier. And he ended up going to college, and he did his work experience at Lords with us. And he ended up deciding to take politics and history in college. And during the election, he stood for the party which we represent. He ended up being the leader of the Liberal Democrats in his college.
That's cool, yeah.
Well with it. So that's another success story from, I mean, we met him when he was 14 and he's now 18. So
that's an amazing step.
Yeah. But it's amazing, but what's happening though, our links with people overseas, and this is where Mark especially, you know, there's one guy in Algeria, he's from,
Nigeria. Nigeria originally.
Nigeria recently, yeah. And now he's sleeping in the basement of a car park, you know, and how we can get out to help those guys, I don't know. But we have to do what we can. You know, little acts of kindness sometimes, that they go a long way.
Yeah.
I'm not promising not to say anything else.
I've been in contact with that gentleman today, and he tried to connect with the choir and the piece of cake event last night, but because of his signal, the reception he had, he could not join us. But he wished us the best, and said that he thought it was amazing the people who had joined together. And I'm going to have a chat with him. I mean, normally we send messages most days, to be honest, because he's such a nice gentleman. He's now 54 and he was deported from the UK in 2013, went back to his own country and then ended up having to leave again because of Boko Haram and his gangs. And now he's ended up in Algeria and he's having such an awful time out there. The basement where he's living in the car park is in a building which hasn't even been built yet. Unfortunately, it's hard trying to help somebody like that because they're not even, they're not in the country. So it's very difficult to try and get them the help that they need. But I mean, I think the fact that he has constant contact with people still helps him. I know he's in contact with a couple of the choir members, which helps him. And most days, Rog puts a prayer on Facebook, and I know he always puts a comment in for each day that Rog posts a prayer. So I think you can do a lot in this country, but I do wish we could do an awful lot more for other people.
And originally just overstayed his visa, hadn't he? That was the year. And he was on hunger strike when I first met him. Oh, there we are. We would have helped and could have helped more then, but I won't say which government it was, but they didn't help us along at all.
I am gobsmacked by, I mean, you meet many people like this and you're actually doing work on the ground with people. And I think the beautiful thing is just giving people that dignity and letting them know that they matter. That's like 50% there, really.
Yeah, it is that dignity, that they are part of the human family, that they're to be respected and to be treated as everybody treated as an equal, Yeah, there we are.
He still has
battle on, Asma, don't we? We battle on. Yeah.
He still has hopes of coming back to the UK and being allowed to come back to the UK one day, because he made friends while he was here. He studied, I can't remember off the top of my head now what it was he studied, but again, it was in the role of helping people.
Yeah.
He was qualified to drive forklift trucks, work in warehouses when he originally came over. So he was doing that as well as studying. And unfortunately, he outstayed his visa, and so
that's right.
Was deported.
And it's quite easy to do that, isn't it? When you sort of, it's quite easy to do that, and to be treated like a criminal and having this.
Yeah.
It's really hard. This is the point, Mark, isn't it? That, I mean, Mehmet and Aisha, because you work directly with all of you guys, how much contribution refugees actually do want to make, don't
Absolutely.
they? They actually really are. Some of the greatest achievements are by people who have been refugees somewhere along in their life. And if only we could see this, they're actually a benefit to us, benefit to society, benefit to mankind. You must have lots of examples, guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think we tend to forget that refugees as a community have faced probably one of the hardest struggles that one could face in their life. You're forced to flee, whether it's a natural disaster or some form of political, religious oppression, racial oppression, and people are having to flee for who they are in that case. And these people, from my own experiences, only want to contribute and only want to integrate and be part of a society and work to support that society. I mean, I see that in the work that the students and mentees that I'm working with do. And some of them do come with shattered dreams, and it just takes a little bit of motivation and they're on again. I've met people who were in the top of their classes, in the countries that they came from, and they come to the country where they don't speak the language. And I mean, I work with female mentees, and for that, it breaks my heart seeing, young girls, at the verge of giving up on their dreams. but with a little motivation, you know, that they can sort the language out within a year or two and are back on track, you know, and helping others, you know, helping people that are both going through the same stance that they've been through, and also society at large. So I think, you know, that they live and are fully aware of the joint humanity, and as Lord Roger mentioned, you know, the values that we all hold, you know, as the human family. And I think they're on the line there, and they've internalized it more than perhaps any of us could have. So yeah,
they just need an opportunity to give them an opportunity.
I think someone to listen and to recognizing, you know, and tell them that they are one with us, you know, their status, you know, doesn't I mean, it may be on a piece of paper, you know, it may be on a passport, or it may be in a stamp, but amongst all of us, they are one of us, you know, that there is no they or us, and we are, you know, united. And I think that's a nice message to give to them, and also to be reminded through them as well, you know, that there's something that we as ourselves, you know, can also take from that too. So
yeah. That's what the choir is called, isn't it? It's called the Citizens of the World Choir.
Yes.
You know why it's called Citizens of the World Choir? Yeah. We'd lost the Dubs Amendment in Parliament, and that was the night the choir was formed. And I remember that a certain Home Secretary had said that if you consider yourself a citizen of the world, you're citizens of nowhere. So that's it, citizens of the world. And it's come on from there. Yeah, citizens of the, I'm very, very pleased we did that. About 3-4 years ago now?
Yes, 3 years ago. And we are always looking for new members. So if you know any refugees or anybody else, you know, we let anybody come and join. To be honest,
even if they can't sing.
Yeah.
I haven't joined because
They wanted me. They wanted me.
I was planning on asking the same question.
I've actually stood up and sang with them, or attempted to sing with them, and so if I've managed to, I'm sure.
I was going to say, do we have comments on at the moment? Are people able to make comments? I've got Vanessa, Amber and Rachel. A shout out to all of you that I know. 3 of you are watching and having cake and tea with us today. And if there's any comments anyone has left, we can read them out. Or
yeah, I mean, I've got the YouTube live chat in front of us. So we've got a lot of hellos and claps and hearts.
Oh, that's lovely.
From people from Sydenham, Oxford joining, Manchester. So I think it's gone out across the UK.
Lovely comments.
People are honoured to be part of a larger family with us all, which is a lovely thing to.
Great, absolutely.
People are eating along. Okay, I'm just scrolling down from the top, but we have around four notes of people eating cake along with us too. So that's positive. Thank you, Asma, for bringing us together to share cake too.
Excellent. And thank you to all the people that work with refugees and make, you know, I know in our own borough of Lewisham, we have the mayor and we have somebody called Kevin Bonavia. We have Fozia, who I think you interviewed yesterday. She does an amazing amount of work with all the families that have settled here, resettling them in and helping, and she works tirelessly. And there are so many heroes, or uncelebrated heroes like yourselves, who actually go out and, you know, give their own time. And I spoke to Negia the other day, who Amber from Donate for Refugees, we did something online, and Negia is amazing human being as well. And I actually feel like a bit of a fraud just inviting people for tea and cake when all these people are just giving up, you know, like you guys giving up your daily lives and actually making a difference. And Roger, you're always posing questions in Parliament as well. So people, yes, can you tell us any of can we recall any of the stuff that's, you know, questions that have been put forward? And
if you've got questions and you want to send them to me, please do. I've got a question in a fortnight's time. Got a question on Tuesday, but that is only about Welsh seaside resorts. So that doesn't because with this important. You know, the present crisis. Oh, so many people are going to feel hardship after it, aren't they? No, the one is, do you remember about 6 weeks ago, the detention centre folk were released into the community? And I wanted to know what accommodation was ready for them. Was there any funding that they could have when they went into the community? And that's what I'm following up at the moment, making sure that nobody in the future is released from a detention centre with no support whatsoever. It's dead easy if the government only listen and do it.
Yes, thank you.
Do you have any kind of statistics or personal accounts on that? Do you know if it's people with families, with young children, or?
I don't, but tomorrow I think Mark will tell me that we're meeting with some people.
No, it's next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, yeah.
3 organisations who
because they're involved in the same thing, to end detention and this sort of thing. Yep, it's a big battle. Oh, keep on, the people who are younger than me. You've got a massive fight ahead of you, but it's worth doing. It's worth doing. It's worth doing if only one person says, that was the best day of my life. It's worth doing. And I'm a very emotional Bob.
Absolutely.
Too emotional for my own good sometimes.
Well, you do it all with your heart, don't you? And as you said, it is possible, doesn't it? It can be possible. And I wonder what is stopping the government, or what is stopping people from supporting this? I think there's a lot of fear, and it's maybe about economics, but you guys have clearly demonstrated how people who are refugees contribute back to the economy. So it's just a no-brainer to be able to help people who are then going to make all the lovely stuff that people have been doing. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It makes sense to us, but why doesn't it make sense to everybody?
Right. People have a different DNA. They look at things in a totally different way from the rest of us,
I don't think the media helps though.
Listen, my friend Donald Trump in the States is a prime example of that. Oh dear. I do hope there's some sense in the States in November. Yeah.
One thing I was shocked to realize was how late refugees could receive the right to work, and we had collaborated with an organization called JCOR, a Jewish organization for racial equality, and we produced this project called Young Neighbors, where we brought young Muslims and young Jews together to campaign for refugees to receive working rights. But we were shocked to see that so many of the developed world grant rights to refugees to work within the moment they arrive, or within a few months if they have a particular skill set. But unfortunately, until the refugee status is confirmed, up to 12 months it could take in the UK to receive rights to work. And it's something that perhaps needs to be campaigned for a lot more.
It's something that Lord Roberts has campaigned for years now, is to have that to change from 12 months to 6 months, and even shorter if possible.
To 3 months, yeah. But remember, when this crisis is over, we're going to have a lot of unemployed people. The jobs are going to be perhaps few and far between. We got a massive job, but we got to do it together.
Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. And I know I'm not in government, and it might be easy to do and not easy to say, but it just takes a bit of creativity, doesn't it, sometimes? And I know, for example, you were asking about the jobs, and I think when people who who are born and live here, so we're having a conversation here, so this is some of the conversation that I hear, which is difficult to answer, but the solutions are there. So people say, for example, oh, there are a lot of people who are white working class, who are born here, British, and they have no job, their education is being affected in the poorer parts of Britain, for example. Or what about jobs for people? for me, it just takes a bit of creativity. It's not the refugees or the migrants or the people that are taking the jobs. I think, yes, after COVID-19, there is going to be a big there is going to be some difficulty. But pre-COVID, there were a lot of jobs that people. It's about creativity, isn't it? It's about giving the same dignity. And I suppose what I'm trying to say is I've worked with people whose families haven't worked for generations, and they have the same problems as, for example, refugees. It's about dignity. So what I found is, I've worked I worked for a local authority for about 17 years, where I was helping people back to work. And I've met families where, they haven't, people haven't had a job for 3 generations, but it wasn't because they didn't want to work. It was very similar to what you're saying about the dignity and how they're treated, or where they live, and all of those things. So we just need to come together. So I always think that the people that are used to fight the battle of or the headlines, the people that are used with the headlines, they're actually in the same boat as people who are refugees. And if only we could come together and help each other, instead of being polar opposites, or people thinking it's that person's fault or this person's fault. I think it would be such a lovely conversation, lovely ways of bringing this forward, and creating things for the economy, creating jobs, business. There's so much to be done, isn't there? Why can't we, or why can't, well, you guys are already doing it, but I'm sure that's the way forward. You need support. We all need to support each other in doing this, don't we?
Yeah. Yes.
Working together with anything, you can get things a lot quicker if you put your heads together.
I'm so glad there are platforms like Piece of Cake and like Human Rights Solidarity, where such projects are highlighted, are showcased, and people can be brought into this conversation. And hopefully we can continue to share these remarkable projects and continue to inspire people to come on board and be part of the great action that's going on. Yeah, I'm definitely going to look into the choir.
We got another comment on the YouTube chat, which I think answers the question really that we're trying to tackle here. And someone's put 60 years of research from social psychology shows that friends with people different from you is what reduces prejudice. So I think it's what we're doing here now. It's what Piece of Cake is doing, in the community on the ground, that really is trying to tackle that, So, and then if 60 years of experience is showing that, and research is showing that, then I guess we've just got to continue, and hopefully it won't take another 60 years for it to be mainstream.
It won't, and it's a lovely time, I think. It's a great time in our history, I think, where people are coming together, and I hope nothing spoils it. I really hope we can carry on this amazing time in our lives. I mean, I spoke to somebody about everything that's happening at the moment with Black Lives Matter, and there are so many people who are not Black who have then become allies of people. They have realized that this is the time to just listen and to be there and help the healing. And then this allyship of refugees as well is so important, because you in one community can't do the work alone. It's got to be a joint thing, and sometimes we need to advocate for other people, and it's great to see. I mean, those marches were multicolored, weren't they? The marches that happened were amazing. It was all of humanity coming together and saying this is not acceptable. And I think so the world is changing. So hopefully with the refugee cause as well, things will change and attitudes will change. And that's what I suppose Piece of Cake tends to cancel out, is there's a lot of platforms for hate on social media and in the news, but there is not many platforms for peace and love. And I suppose Piece of Cake gives people that license and that platform to share the goodness in you, because everybody has goodness in them.
Thank you, Esma, for wrapping the conversation up really, really sweetly and just on point. I think Do any of our other speakers have any final words and closing remarks they'd like to make at all?
Can I just say one more thing, please? Trying to make a positive out of the isolation that we've all been going through over the past 3 months. I mean, one thing I think is, which has been amazing, which has come out of that, is the fact that people have adapted and they've gone to, they've gone online, they've taken their platforms online. I mean, I've been to, although I rarely am able to make the choir's rehearsals when I'm working in London, but I've been to most of the rehearsals online, and meetings where we'd normally miss them because we're in another meeting. We've been able to make so many meetings and meet up with people and keep in contact with our families, with my family, more than what I have beforehand. And I know that's the same with Lord Roberts. He said that he's been speaking to his children, they're adults now with their children, but he's kept in touch with them every day as well. And I think that's something which is a good thing which has come out of this COVID-19 pandemic.
Yep.
That people have adapted and moved to the internet to stay in touch with each other. And I do hope there's a bit more of that after this as well. So, people don't just suddenly think, right, that's it, it's done now, back to normal lives. Okay, thank you. And a big thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk on tonight as well.
Yeah, thank you. We have a comment about the cake as well behind you. That perhaps if we had one as big as the one on display, then we wouldn't have it. So, yeah, maybe we'll go back to making.
Next year at Parliament we'll have a cake that big.
I go along with that one, Asma.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for taking
again. They'll be talking about us if we meet again.
Well, we can definitely meet again. No, I think
the old grandfather here. There we are.
Yes, we'll have to organise a meeting, definitely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mama Tanisa, and to Human Rights Solidarity.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Welcome as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and to another day of cake and tea, please.
Without a doubt.
They're trying to feed me to an early death, I guess.